Welcome to the Tow.Club Industry Podcast. My name is Art. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, I have a very special guest who I think you will find very interesting. I have Brian Wagaman, also known as Tow Truck Wags. Brian, how are you, man?
Doing good.
Right on, man. Right on. So I've been taking a look at some of your content, and I think it's pretty cool that you are getting exposure for Slow Down, Move Over, among other things in the towing industry. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but before we really kind of get into it, I wanted to ask you. I mean, I know a little bit about you, but I think a lot of people listening, some may and some may not. So if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, your experience in the towing industry, and kind of like what led you to be here.
Okay. Well, uh, basically the way my story goes is I was an addict for 20 years about. It was a long time, and decided one day I was gonna just turn my life around. There was no defining moment. I just woke up one day and decided I was done, and I tried to do good things to make up for the bad stuff I'd done as I was recovering, and I was delivering food to people who couldn't get in town to get meals, and I got a flat tire. So I put out a little thing on Facebook saying I needed help. A friend of mine, he drove a tow truck, and he came and gave me a hand, let me ride with him, and I thought it was really cool the way he got my minivan in my sideways driveway. It was perfect. Uh, so he let me. I didn't have nothing else going on, and he let me go ahead and ride around with him a couple times. And I went on a police call, and I was hooked from that. Uh, his towing company was hiring, and they gave me a job, and so that's how I got into the towing industry.
Nice. So how long have you been in the industry thus far?
About 10 years, about a decade.
10 years. Okay, cool. And did you obviously towing, but did you do all aspects of towing, or was it just light duty, or what type of
Yeah,
towing did you do?
yeah, just roll back.
Just rollback? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's obviously that makes up a majority of towing. A rollback is one of the most, commonly used pieces of equipment. So that's good. So you have a lot of perspective, and I find it really interesting. First of all, congratulations on the sobriety, and I find
well,
it very interesting because you're not the first person that I've had this conversation with in terms of like towing actually being sort of a conduit to recovery, right? Like
yeah,
take interest in doing some benevolent work, helping, roadside assistance, helping stranded people, etc. And it
yeah,
becomes kind of like there's a correlation between like recovery and the towing industry, and I find that very, very interesting.
yeah.
Um, I also wanted to ask you, just because I see you have a sizable online audience and that you're constantly putting out the short videos and information that's adjacent to the industry. I wanted to ask who you thought or who you either looked up to or as somebody that also has an online presence, figures in the social media market that you may have good relationships with. Maybe we could hear what you have to say about some of these people.
But I, well, I'd always wanted to do videos, but I never could because my teeth were messed up, horrible because of all the years of addiction. And but I had surgery, real super extensive surgery, and I got all my teeth fixed. So I started doing videos, and they did okay. Well, then the pandemic happened, and uh, nobody was really driving, uh, and no movies weren't being made anymore. So social media became everybody's entertainment, and I
Yes.
and since nobody's driving, there's not a whole lot wasn't a lot of work going on in my area at least. So I spent my time in the Copart parking lots making funny videos just to
Cool.
pass time. And the other tow ops, they started watching me. There was one guy named Tow Truck Dude. Uh, he's out of Cincinnati. Um, he was huge. He was like the biggest tow truck guy on TikTok, and I did everything I could to get that guy's attention because it's so weird how you can kind of idolize people from the internet because
Sure. Yeah.
they're just normal people. But I did everything I could and finally got his attention. And actually, I had to tow to Cincinnati and met up with him. And he was one of the coolest guys I'd ever met. Uh, he doesn't do it anymore. The social media got to be it's a lot of pressure, especially
Yeah.
if you have a family.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot whenever you get such a big following.
Right.
So he doesn't do it anymore. Then I started watching uh, Tow Truck Jess, female out of North Carolina. Everybody, a lot of people know her. Um, but then as I got bigger, other creators started reaching out to me. Uh, John DeWeese, he's a pretty big creator.
Yeah, we had him on recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I like John a lot.
So yeah, we did have John Dewey's on. It was a really interesting conversation, and I've also looked at some of his material, enjoyed some of his material, and just looking at the social media landscape. I have to tell you, I took notice of your hat. I got to ask you about the hat, man. That's pretty cool. Haters love me. Tell me a little bit about the hat.
I, I, it, I was buying all the green hats I could find, and this one seemed to stick. Everybody likes it. Get a lot of haters, but that's okay though. Because if everybody liked me, then it's
Sure.
so boring. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a couple guys that are worse than others. There's
Of
one guy.
course. And you're going to find varying opinions online. Some people are going to like what you're doing. Some people may not like what you're doing. I've
Oh yeah,
encountered this as well. And some people are just, in the comments, they're just unrealistic or unreasonable or, you
oh
know,
yeah,
and sometimes it's a competitive thing, right? If it's like somebody that's competing to put out content and competing for viewership.
yeah,
Um, I it's funny every once in a while you see towers kind of make diss tracks about one another, and it kind of, you see that
yeah,
stuff online, and I think ultimately nobody carries these rivalries to their heart. I think ultimately it's just posturing, but people are going to have something to say, I think, no matter what the content is. Um, since we're on that subject, you brought up something that I think is interesting is like, hey, the pandemic happened, the entertainment industry kind of paused. Here comes social media to kind of fill the void. Since
mhm,
then, obviously Hollywood's back,
yeah,
but from what I can see, and you probably know better than I do, um, social media has probably increased in outreach, and
yeah,
particularly in towing. Towing didn't used to be uh, carry so much bandwidth on social. And when I look at, for example, the size of your audience and some
mhm,
of the other guys, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Towing is registering online. People are interested in this, and the people that are interested in it are not always people in our industry. Some people are just like,
yeah,
oh, I just learned something about this industry that I knew nothing about. What do you think down the line? How do you think this looks like growth and change, technology, social media? How do you think that's going to influence what we do in towing down the line? What do you see happening? Let's say in the next 3 years or something.
how it's going to influence the industry. Well, I know if you use the exposure for the right reasons, it could be a real positive thing. Um, that's what I try to do. I try and give a positive message with every post. I try and avoid negativity. I don't want the tow industry to have any kind of negative light
Right,
on.
right.
I don't know.
It's hard to guarantee that though, right? Every now and again, I'm sure you see the same clips I do of some tower just
Yeah.
acting, doing some crazy stuff or doing something illegal openly out in public or
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of things. The other day I saw, I'm sure you saw it, the guy, I think he was injured and then he ends up stealing the guy's tow truck.
Yeah,
Yeah, you saw that.
that was
Um,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, that was pretty wild. So, I mean, do you think because there is so much social media influence pointed at the towing industry, do you think that changes how towers are going to behave? Do you think more towers are going to want to take their businesses and at least share some stuff on social media? Because Brian, I think you probably agree with me. Right now, most of them don't. Even though
Yeah,
numbers are increasing, most towers don't do that. What do you
yeah.
see that?
I, I'm not sure how I feel about that. A lot of them I know don't share it because they know they're doing shortcuts or whatever, and they don't want to
Right.
get called out online. But at the same time, a lot of people say it's an insurance liability or whatever, uh, which I don't know. I If it's not a fatality or nothing like that, I don't see too big of a problem. I would never share a fatality, uh,
Sure.
nothing like that. But yeah, you'll get these guys who think they've got the golden viral clip because it's a fatality and
Sure.
they think it's going to get views. They'll
They're,
learn.
they're trying to run wild with something that they think might be interesting
Yeah,
to people.
yeah,
Or
they'll learn really quick that it's not going to work. It's live. They'll
yeah.
get the backlash fast. Uh,
Well, even, developing an audience, and I learned this the hard way because, I don't directly manage all of my social media presence. In fact, very little of it. I obviously partake in producing the content, but I think people are not aware of the work that it takes to build up that audience. In other words, the constant insistence on producing relevant content, the
yeah,
consistency, the grind of the day in and day out. I think people are mistaken, as you mentioned, when they think one video is going to change their fortunes.
yeah, it's a full-time job. I'm telling you. It's
How much time do you spend, Brian, since you're on the subject, a week just producing content?
I do my best work whenever I'm always recording all the time,
Okay.
constantly. There's like 9 cameras on the truck. I got my body camera that I wear everywhere. Let this truck pass. Man, I picked a bad spot.
Oh, that's all right, man.
Yeah, I got like there's like 9 cameras on the truck. I got my body camera. I got a 360 camera. I'm always constantly recording, but I mean, a lot of people, most people have a dash camera, so they are too. But I, it's just I my best. I take all that video at the either at the end of the night, right before I go to bed, or right when I first wake up. That's when I'm most creative. Uh,
Right. But
so
you're really day in and day out trying to produce content. I mean, every day. I
yeah,
take it,
yeah, yeah.
right?
All day, every day, I'm recording, and
Nice.
just in
Nice.
case. I
So
got like
for those of you listening, this stuff doesn't happen overnight.
yeah,
You
you
know,
can it's best you post like 3 videos a day, and eventually it's gonna one of them's gonna go viral, and you'll get the audience. The problem is keeping them. Is
right.
it's not hard to get relevant. The work is staying relevant.
Yes.
I think the lifespan of a social media star is like 6 months, maybe, from what I've seen. But
Really. So it's that short
yeah, it's quick. But
because
I've
they flame
met,
out, right? They produce something that's interesting, they build up a following, and then they sort of become monotonous.
yeah, usually they'll let it get to their head and they'll start getting political, posting their political views or something like that, and that's
And then it's curtains for them after that,
yeah,
right? Because then
yes,
you lose half your audience. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
instantly. You
Yeah.
instantly lose 50%.
Yeah. No, I can see that. In fact, on my personal social media, I think I probably learned some lessons about what was a good idea to discuss, what was not
Yeah,
a good idea to discuss, or even more importantly, how to discuss something. So, if you feel a particular way about a topic, like how to discuss it. Like, are you mocking the people that disagree with you? Or are you inviting conversation? Those are two very different things. If I say
yeah,
I don't like this politician and everybody who likes him is an idiot, well, that's not
yeah,
really the way to have the conversation, right?
yeah.
perhaps I could say I don't like this guy and here's why, but it's a free country and
Yeah,
people are, ultimately able to make the choice that they want and that's their choice, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it becomes polarizing and
Oh,
people,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's hard to find people to have a grown up conversation with.
No, that is very true. That is very true. And as the years have gone on, I could confidently say, and the people that I interact with online, I think that everybody, my circle and everybody, whether it's in the industry or adjacent to the industry, everybody has learned a little something about how to conduct themselves online. I mean, some people haven't, but most people they kind of like, oh yeah, this way doesn't work, or I'm not going to be so divisive when I talk about something.
Yeah.
Since we're on this subject, because obviously I know you talk to towers a lot,
Oh, yeah.
constant communication. So between your discussions with towers and how you feel personally, I wanted to ask, what are you concerned about in towing? Like what are the things right now that you think and that towers are just really, really concerned with about the future of towing?
Yeah. I know insurance is one. It's outrageous.
I've seen your commercials, Brian. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I've seen it, and we did recently have Andrew on, Andrew
Oh,
Meinster. I found him to be very engaging. We've
yeah.
had other insurance people on in the past. We had Chip from ATIG, who's also great at what he does. I found him incredibly engaging.
Yeah.
Insurance, you're right on the money. I mean, some of you know, some of you don't know. I'm a small tower myself. So being a small tower in Northern California and the San Francisco Bay Area, insurance has become just an outrageously large part of our outtake. Like we're paying for insurance 3, 4 times what we did just 7, 8 years ago. Um, and so what else do you see out there apart from insurance?
Um, uh, you mean that's we're talking about concerns, right?
Yeah, like how about labor, like
Yeah.
drivers?
Yeah, that's a big one. I, I, I'm very lucky in the fact that I went from a driver to an owner. But I mean, like I guess all owners probably have been a driver too, but I'm fresh at it, so I got a real good perspective of as a driver, you're like, well, the owner's getting rich, and you don't see all the expenses, but
No, you don't.
so I get these young guys calling me all the time asking how they can get a tow truck like mine because they knew I went through a program to get mine. But
Right.
they're like 20, 21 years old, but they want to just jump in and own their own company, and because they don't like working for anybody because they're making them rich. I'm like, man, you'd have no idea. But even then, I can't find a helper to help me. Uh, I'm having surgery on that in about 2 weeks, and I need to find somebody to work with me to get out and hook up cars while I drive. Uh,
Sure.
I won't be able to get down on the ground. I can't find it. There's nobody that wants to work.
Mm.
I've tried a couple guys and tried training them, and on day two, every one of them's they both gave me the pitch of I could, if you buy me a truck, I can do this on the side and give you a cut. Everybody they just want to grab their own truck and go. They don't want to help out and work.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I hear you, and I talk to towers a lot too. And when it comes to labor, the discussions that I often have, I'm like as an owner, so I'm typically talking to other owners. What's interesting to me is how the conversation changes when you're talking to drivers. So if I was to talk to a driver from and I'm sure you would agree with me that in my local market, I'm not going to talk to the driver of another company meaningfully about the industry just because I don't want to step on the toes of the competitors in my market. But
yeah.
let's say I talk to a driver from Texas, it's not in my market. And the
Hmm.
gripe I hear from drivers is like, hey man, I work Monday through Friday, and then the guy tells me to take my truck home 2 or 3 nights a week. And you know, I'm not getting paid for how much I work. is one of the concerns. I hear I don't have medical benefits. I have a family. I have no medical benefits. So
Yeah.
um, we heard those over the years in my towing business, and we did something about it. We slowly said, okay, how are we going to get medical benefits? How are we going to get these retirement benefits? How are we going to give these guys a quality of life? So, for example, and this is just me, I don't I say this with no judgment, but we went to a 4-day work week for our drivers. They work 4 10-hour shifts, and they
Yeah.
get days off. And they don't, they don't take trucks home. They actually have a life for 3 days, right? If they
Yeah.
want to work a fifth day, we put that on the table and tell them, hey, it's optional. You can work overtime. But so I hear those gripes from drivers, and from owners. I'm hearing quite the opposite. So I oftentimes ask myself quietly, I'm like, who's telling the truth here? Like the drivers are saying, I'm not being paid enough, I'm overworked. And the owners are saying, these young guys, they don't want to work. These young guys don't want to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slur they attach to that, the millennial generation.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so I know the truth is somewhere in between, if we're being honest, because I oftentimes, and I've had owners on the show before, and what I've done, Brian, is like in one case I had a tower from Kansas City metro area on, and the conversation and the reason I had him on is I knew that he had a large group of drivers working for him. I knew that his reputation in the industry was being good to his staff. So when we had that conversation, it was very refreshing. He's like, "Look, I pay for all these benefits. I want them to have a good place to work." The issue that I find is when I talk to certain owners, it's always just trashing their workforce. And if it's not directly who works for them, like, oh, I have, every driver that comes in here washes out and they don't keep their promises. They don't. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, well, yeah, no wonder you're not able to get labor. And I could be wrong here, but if you spend so much time on social media trashing your workforce, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the best recipe to attract people to come work for you. You know what I mean? Instead of
Yeah.
maybe thinking about what you do differently, which I think could be a positive thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, do you hear these kinds of things from drivers as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a fine line where the truth is in the middle, but it's in there. Uh, yeah, I know that there's good younger workers out there. Uh,
I believe
uh,
that to be true as well. I do.
yeah, I know they are. Uh, it's hard to find somebody that's willing to do towing work because it's a scary job. It's dangerous.
It is.
Uh, I don't know. You'll get the thrill seekers who want to do it for that reason, but I don't know. They're kind of wild cards though, and they
I hear you. I've had a few guys like that in the past. Yeah.
yeah, it's it's got to find the perfect balance of crazy and sensible.
What do you think if you had to just kind of say what a major gripe among the drivers you talk to? Obviously, yes, they want to do their own thing, but what do you think? What are you hearing from just the driver perspective? Is it pay? Is it schedule? What do you hear the biggest complaints about?
Schedule probably.
Schedule. They're just working too much, right? They're
Yeah,
taking the
yeah,
truck home, and so it's probably incumbent on owners out there to consider this fact when you're doing your scheduling, when you're trying to take care of your workforce. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So
I don't know how a lot of companies do their scheduling. I've only worked for one company my entire career, so that's all I know.
right.
And when we took our truck home every day, and
Every day, huh?
even on days off, we would have our truck in case there's a police call. We could jump in and help make that extra money. But I come from a real small company of like two or three drivers, two or three
Gotcha.
trucks.
So there was no choice.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
only
And if
way to, the only way to staff that 24 hours is everybody kind of pitch
yeah,
in, right? Yeah.
yeah, and if, we had one driver. He was a great guy, but then he fell into drugs, and uh, they had to get rid of him. Uh, and so of course that forces everybody else to have to pick up his slack when it's already a tight ship. You know,
Right.
uh,
Right.
it, it's a bummer, but
Yeah.
I get you got to do it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Hey, I mean, I saw you at the Las Vegas Tow Show last year,
Mm.
and I wanted to ask what shows upcoming do you plan to be that? Obviously, I'd like to meet you formally, but where do you plan to be, for example, for the rest of this year in terms of tow shows?
So Baltimore is guaranteed. I will 100% be there. I've already got a booth secured there.
Nice. We'll see you there.
Uh, Tennessee and Ohio are in the next couple weeks, and I'm planning on going to those. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but I'm trying. I'm gonna try my hardest to get there. They have
Okay,
Ohio Tow Show is having a parade for the fallen tow ops
got
to,
it.
to kick it off, and I plan on being in it with the truck.
Nice.
But it's just I'm 4 months into being an owner, so I'm still learning the financial part. So it's tight right now.
Yeah, and the financial part, I'm a small tower myself. That has been the most challenging for me over the years is like,
Mhm.
understanding accounting, understand what you can and can't do, and how to figure out whether you can afford to do something or not afford to do something. And there's
Yeah,
some challenges there. There's some learning curve for sure.
yeah. Usually I would have like Baltimore and Orlando and Las Vegas. I have sponsors that pay for me to
Nice.
to stand in their booth there, and like Andrew Meister, he's a great guy. He really is.
Yeah.
Uh, I do his commercials. I have for a long time, and but other than that, we're friends outside of the industry. We talk and buddy buddy share
Sure.
share secrets and stories with each other. But he was the first big person to sponsor me. Uh,
Nice.
him and Jason Giddens from Big Stiffy. He's another
Yeah,
one.
I had Jason on. I liked hearing what he had to say, and just as importantly, I really liked his products. I
Yeah,
haven't got them in
yeah,
my hand yet. I ordered some, but I did put my hands on them at the Vegas Tow Show, and I was like, okay, I like what he's done here.
yeah.
It's
I,
I like towers being creative and saying, I can do this. I can do this thing that helps the industry.
yeah, I got four of them back here in my green bag.
The
So
the, the big long reach tool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they're great.
Yeah, it's pretty
But
cool. We're waiting for ours. We just did an order the other day.
uh,
For me, because we run auto loaders, I was especially interested in the adapters for the L
yeah,
arms on the auto loaders.
yeah.
We think
Uh,
that those are going to come in handy for us when we get our hands on them. So, Jason,
uh,
if you're listening, can we hurry up with the shipping?
But if you get Jason and Andrew together in the same room, they could sell anything to anybody. Those are the two most relentless salesmen I've ever met, and they're good at they know what they're doing.
You got to be on top of the grind, man. If you want
Yeah,
to move a product, if you want to move an idea,
but,
um,
but that's,
particularly in the social media space. Yeah.
yeah, and that's great for me because I don't talk in real life in person. Everybody thinks I'm mad at them or I'm stuck up, but it's not. That's not it at all. I spent 20 years an addict and uh, stupid phone. Oh,
No worries,
sorry
man.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry, another phone call. Now, I spent 20 years as an addict in these trap houses, not talking to anybody because you're gonna get stabbed if you say the wrong thing. So I don't talk to people. It's just how I am. So when I get people like Andrew or Jason or John DeWeese, especially, they are great at doing the talking for me. Because if you just walk up to me, I might say a sentence
Sure.
and that's it. People think I'm mad or stuck up. That's not it. I haven't learned my people skills yet in person.
No, I hear you. I hear you. And everybody has a different take on that. And
But
usually it's based on their past experiences, right? Like
so
you mentioned. Um, Brian, I wanted to ask, I mean, would you like to promote or bring awareness to any particular thing that either you're doing or somebody else is doing?
uh, I mean, we got of course the slow down move over laws. Uh, I do that's the number one thing I'm trying. Another thing I'm trying to find out how to make blue lights available to tow truck drivers in Indiana. Because right now we're just amber and white, and newspaper delivery guys use that.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
how we are in California. I wish we could use a more
yeah,
official and formal looking light as well.
yeah. And you see, I mean, you'll get the guys from Missouri or wherever, they're legal and they're like, oh, it don't help. They still don't move over. Yeah, but I'd really like to have at least that extra protection, at least try. Uh,
Right.
yeah,
No,
that
I hear you.
anything that could possibly help, I'm up for.
Yeah.
I get
Well,
so many. Yeah,
no, I hear you. I hear you. And I wanted to just remind the audience, to be supportive of the people in and around the industry that are bringing awareness to slow down, move over. As I mentioned to many of my past guests, whether it was Andrew, Jason, John, etc., we need to bring the curve down. I mean, I think everybody here is realistic. Everybody in this industry is realistic. We know that we can't solve this overnight, but we do need to reduce the number of people that are getting hit, right? And what we're hoping for is that the entire industry is supportive. For example, some of the things you're doing to bring awareness, some of the things that other guys are doing. We had Todd Lease on here the other day, and he was talking about what his organization. He's in charge of I think it's the Jersey Turnpike Commission, and so collectively, I'd like to remind the audience that we need to be supportive, uh, of people who are bringing awareness to slow down and move over. So, on behalf of the industry, Brian, I wanted to thank you for that awareness. And I've taken up a ton of your time. I really appreciate it. I know, obviously, you've got quite a bit to do. So, I did want to conclude today's show by reminding the audience as well, if you aren't willing to know, please don't tow.